Good morning, good morning, good morning, my brothers and sisters. Good morning, and welcome to another Good Morning Grief Devotion. It's your boy, Pastor Corey Allen Duncan Sr. Excited to have this time and this opportunity to come to you on a day to lead you in a very special way, and yet another grief devotion. This is the day that the Lord has made. He has commanded us to rejoice and to be glad in it, and we are grateful for this time and this opportunity together on today to lead you in a very special way. And yet another grief devotion. This is the daily grief devotional that is strategically designed to help you to navigate through your grief one day at a time. What is grief? I'm so glad you asked. Grief, my brothers and sisters, it is the natural and normal, the necessary response to loss, change, and transition that results in the expressions of feelings and emotions. Grief is what you feel on the inside. Mourning is what you reveal on the outside. Therefore, we don't suppress it, but we express it. We don't ignore it, but we explore it. We don't lock it up. We don't conceal it, but we reveal it. We don't lock it up, but we let it out. And that's why we shout good morning, because morning is a good thing. And I want to thank y'all for joining us on today, on this Thursday, February the 29th. It's a leap year, and this is a leap day. And so we are grateful for this time and opportunity together. If you were with us on yesterday on our on our daily hope devotional, we had a phenomenal devotion, y'all, that really dealt with grief. And I said, you know what? This was crazy. It was right on time because in the book that we use, 365 Days of Understanding Your Grief by Alan Wolfett, um, of course, they don't have a February 29th, right? So I said, the lesson yesterday was right on time. And I said, you know what? It would be perfect for me to expound upon in today's grief group. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. So if you heard this lesson yesterday, you're going to get it for the second time. Or if you saying, well, I already heard it, and I'm click off, do what you got to do. You know, the Holy Spirit is always speaking and saying different stuff. And so we're just going to jump into it from yesterday. I didn't recreate the graphic in our Good Morning Grief fashion, so it's still in the Daily Hope fashion, but it is what it is. It's coming from Lamentations 3, and it says, He has made my skin and flesh grow old. He has broken my bones. He has besieged and surrounded me with anguish and distress. He has buried me in a dark place like those long dead. And though I cry out, he has shut out my prayers. Today is actually day 60. And from this devotion, we're going to talk from the title of Let It All Out. Let it all out. Go ahead and type it in the chat for me one time for the one time. I want y'all to type in the chat, let it all out. Type, I need to let it all out. In the chat, type, I need to let it all out. This coffee cup match my scarf and my shirt. Ain't that special? Mm-hmm. Life begins after coffee. Let it all out. Thank you. Thank you, Felicia Henderson. Thank you. I need to let it all out. Thank you, Sean Spells. I need to let it all out. Thank you, Carmen Kennedy. Thank you, Mother Duncan. I need to let it all out. Thank you, Miss Verna, Miss Nikisha Foss, and Miss Linda Hall. I need to let it all out. All right. I want to see at least five. Let's jump into it, y'all. We all go through a time in our lives where seems to be, we all go through a time when our lives seem to be falling apart. We lose our job, a relationship falls apart, someone dies, our health takes a turn for the worse. In those times, we're tempted to think God has abandoned us, but He hasn't. Y'all, going through grief, you feel like God has abandoned you. Going through the worst pain, the worst time, the worst test, the worst trial, the worst turmoil of your life, going through a season like this, you can feel as if God has left you, God has abandoned you. But He hasn't. That's what I want you to know and understand. This part of the devotion reminds me of the story of the footprints in the sand. That man felt as if God abandoned him. I don't have time to expound and go into it. You got to go read it. If you never heard it, just Google footprints in the sand. Long story short, a man felt that he was abandoned by God, but God was right there with him every step of the way. And I want you to know, if you feel as if you've been abandoned by God, you got to know and understand that God is with you every step of the way. The prophet Jeremiah was in the same boat when he wrote the book of Lamentations. His country, Judah, endured an economic tailspin and was terrorized by a foreign enemy. He witnessed incredible inhumanities committed against his people. People were out of work and starving to death. Y'all, this is loss, change, and transition. That they were going through a great season of grief. Where did Jeremiah start? He told God how he felt. God has made my skin and flesh grow old. He has broken my bones, besieged and surrounded me with anguish and distress. He has buried me in a dark place like those long dead, and I cry and shout. He has shut out my prayers. He starts by crying out to God. Jeremiah, that's why this book is called the Book of Lamentations. He laments, he cries out to God. That's where he starts. And so for many of us, as we navigate through our season of grief, you got to understand the power and the importance of crying out to God. You got to know the power and the importance of lamenting, to crying out to God in the midst of your situation and circumstance, whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're going through, right? However you are feeling. Every single day is going to be different. Ups, downs. We got to cry out to God. And some of us, and you got to work through this too, some of us may be mad at God. Some of us may be side-eyeing God, right? Because we blame God, or we say God allowed it to happen. How come he didn't stop it? How come he didn't block it? How come you didn't intervene, God, right? Some of us get to that part, and that's what keeps us from crying out to God. And maybe you may endure that for a season as you wrestle and as you grapple with that. This is what you call theodicy, right? When bad things happen to good people, right? When you start talking about the things that have taken place in your life as it relates to your loved one who has transitioned, you got to wrestle. So if you're in a position where you can't cry out to God for help in the midst of the situation, maybe this is the season for you to wrestle in that theodicy, where you begin to wrestle with what has taken place. But this is the thing. Put yourself in a safe place and safe space where you can wrestle, where you can have that conversation, when you can articulate that. Because if that's how you feel, that's what you need to reveal, right? And so before you get to the point to where you can cry out to God for help because you're mad at him or you side-eyeing him in some type of way, then perhaps you get to the point to where you just start to cry out to God, or you start to wrestle with what you're feeling and how you're feeling, even as it relates to God. That's what I want you to know and understand. That's what's so very important in this season that you're in. Jeremiah felt like God had forgotten him, but Jeremiah didn't ignore what he was feeling. He didn't sugarcoat the situation. He told God what was on his heart. In fact, Jeremiah spent 5 chapters telling God what he thought about the situation. He told God, this stinks. And I love it so much, and I want you to be able to do the same thing. If that's how you feel, tell God, this stinks. He spends 5 chapters pouring his heart out to God. He did not ignore it. He explored. That's what I say every single day. He did not ignore, he explored. And whatever you're feeling as you navigate through the season of grief, you cannot ignore, you got to explore. You express yourself to God. If you hate it, tell him you hate it. If it stinks, tell him it stinks, right? The only thing that you cannot do is ignore how you feel. You have to address and express and articulate to God, what's on the inside of you. Why would God put that kind of passage in the Bible? He wants you to know that he can handle your anger, your gripes, and your grief. Jeremiah spends an entire book of the Bible blowing off steam. If God was big enough to handle Jeremiah's pain, he's big enough to handle your pain as well. God can handle your anger. He can handle your gripes. He can handle your grief. He can handle it. He puts this in the Bible to be not just descriptive, but also prescriptive. Not only does he describe what happened, but it can also prescribe how you need to go about handling your situation. That you are in a position where you can cry out to God. He can handle your anger. He can handle your grief. He can handle your gripes. He can handle whatever you want to say. You just need to express it and articulate it to him. If you swallow your emotions, then you just hurt yourself and your stomach will keep score. We talked about this yesterday. You don't want to swallow your emotions because grief will get trapped in the body. You don't want to just, well, I'm not going to say nothing. That means you're suppressing. When you swallow your emotions, you're suppressing how you feel. And when you do that, grief gets trapped in the body. And you can start having headaches, stomach aches, all of this other stuff because you don't release. Remember, release brings about relief. You want to put yourself in a position where you can release so you can bring about relief. Instead, unload your emotions on God. Y'all want to unload your emotions of God. When my kids were little, they throw temper tantrums, but they didn't make me love them any less. It reminded me that my kids were immature. They didn't know what I knew. God doesn't love you any less when you throw a temper tantrum. He doesn't owe you an explanation, but he is never afraid of what you have to say. So tell him how you feel. Your honesty and humility with him will be the beginning of your healing. Tell God how you feel. We don't conceal, we reveal. We feel, we reveal, and that's how we heal. So you have to tell God how you feel. There was 3 questions that I thought were real good. Talk it over, and perhaps you can answer these questions on your own. What is going on in your life that you've been afraid to talk to God about? What is going on in your life that you've been afraid to talk to God about? Number 1. Number 2, why is it sometimes difficult to be honest with God about our struggles? Why is it sometimes difficult to be honest with God about our struggles? And finally, question number 3 simply says, try writing a letter to God about your struggles. How does it help you to put those words on paper? What can you more easily say to God by writing rather than speaking? Try writing a letter to God about your struggles. How does it help you put those words on paper? What can you more easily say to God by writing rather than speaking? Amen. Today is day 60. Let it all out. Come on, good morning, Grief Devotion questions. If you got questions about this lesson, holla at your boy. Yep, shout, let it all out. Yeah, I love that. Yes, mama. I need to let it out. That's right. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yes, ma'am. You need to let it out, Miss Amy. Miss Amy Patrick. We need to let it all out. Brandy Woodall, we need to let it all out. Everybody, we need to let it all out. I want y'all to know that revealing is the beginning of healing. No matter what you feel, God can handle your anger. He can handle your gripes. He can handle whatever you got to say, right? And so you got to reveal. You got to reveal. No longer should you run, right? You can't fix what you refuse to face. And I'm telling you, there's still life for you waiting to be lived. But you have to put yourself in a position to help to be able to navigate through the loss, change, and transition that you've experienced in your life. And so let it out. No questions. Well, I love y'all with the love of the Lord. I appreciate y'all. Hope y'all have a thriving Thursday. Looking forward to being with you all again tomorrow. 8 a.m. Same bat time, same bat station. Love you with the love of the Lord. Let's go.